time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. First, the National Economic Council has endorsed the new development blueprints to guide the country's economic reforms for the next 5 years. The council, chaired by Vice President Kashim Shettima, also reviewed progress in eradicating the polio virus. The meeting also announced that Nigeria's current excess crude account stands at just over $535,000. The stabilization account, 78.4 billion naira, and the natural resources account, 106.7 billion naira. State House correspondent ASUU Omoran reports.
Nigeria is setting its sight on the next economic roadmap. Agenda 2050 is the country's 30-year vision to fight poverty and grow the economy. It is broken into 6 medium-term plans, each lasting 5 years. The first plan, from 2021 to 2025, ends in December. And now, the National Economic Council has endorsed the next phase, nicknamed the Renewed Hope Plan for 2026 to 2030.
This will ensure policy continuity, consolidate ongoing reforms, and respond to emerging socio-economic challenges. It will also help in providing a coherent framework to accelerate job creation, improve human capital, expand sustainable infrastructure, enhance food security, and strengthen social protection. The Renewed Hope Plan 2026 to 2030 will serve as a bridge between current reform momentum and the long-term aspirations of Nigeria's Agenda 2050.
The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning adds that the plan, due to be launched by the President before the end of the year, will be developed through a participatory process involving all levels of government and key stakeholders.
Also, 3 governance structures, namely a National Steering Committee, a Central Working Group, and Technical Working Group, which will be co-chaired by both public and private sector members, will be put in place to midwife the plan, as well as having governors to represent the 6 geopolitical zones.
Council also turned its attention to the fight against polio, where officials report progress, but one of persistent risks, with the new variant spreading in Nigeria's northwest.
The progress so far made has shown that epidemiological data is on a downward trend. It has gone down to 42 cases. And also, Kano and Katsina states particularly have recorded 85% and 84% reductions respectively, while Gombe has no case at all this year. Sokoto is at the back of the seat. So far, out of the 23 cases recorded in 2025, Sokoto has 13 cases. And so the committee has reported that, and we've discussed with the governor of Sokoto State with a view to how to strategize and see that they give effective coverage and ensure that routine immunization reaches all the people.
NEC directed the Accountant General to release funds to the Primary Healthcare Agency to support upcoming nationwide vaccination campaigns covering vaccines, logistics, and operations. And as it is customary, the country's financial health was laid bare during the meeting. The excess crude account stands at just over $535,000. The stabilization account has 78.4 billion naira, and the natural resources account has 106.7 billion naira. ASUU Omoran, Arise News.
In other news, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited says he is facing growing threats from forces resisting reforms in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Speaking during a meeting with the leadership of Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Ojulari alleged that individuals opposed to the restructuring of the sector and the revival of refineries are behind moves to undermine his leadership. He said despite the attacks, the NNPCL will not be deterred, but will push forward with reforms aimed at serving the national interest. Since assuming office 5 months ago, Ojulari said his administration has prioritized the rehabilitation of Nigeria's refineries, exploring exploring models like the incorporated joint venture to make them more efficient and commercially viable. Pengassan President Festus Osifo commended the progress recorded under Ojulari's leadership, calling it remarkable.
What we've asked over time is that is it not possible in the refineries for us to bring a refiner who is well experienced to buy into the shares of the refineries, then our government through NNPCL will reduce their stake in the refineries so that it will reduce a lot of political interference, so that at the end of the day, the continuous operation of the refinery will be a going concern.
We've now completed technical review of the 3 refineries, but it's not just about technical. It's also about commercial viability. It has to make money. Maybe not a lot, but it should not be making a loss, right? We've now completed the commercial review for the Port Harcourt refinery. And from that commercial review, we have come to that conclusion that the best way forward is for us to get a true professional refining company to join us and cooperate. No hiding around all the attacks that I have received and all the plans to take me out of this seat. Let's not pretend. It's a real formidable plan. And I repeat again, NNPC, we are under attack. However, we know why this attack is coming. We have our commitment and we are resolved to stay focused, to drive the mandate that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has given us.
And in other news, the federal government says there is no binding agreement between it and the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU. According to the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, the 2009 ASUU speaks of is a draft document and not a legal document. He reiterated the government's commitment to resolve issues raised by the union and that President Bola Tinubu had mandated the ministry to find a lasting solution that will ensure that lecturers do not down tools. He said the government will ensure that ASUU's recent protests will not degenerate into a strike, as the government has engaged the union continuously and meticulously.
Let me clear this point of correction out. The Solicitor General looked into the agreement. The government has never signed any agreement with ASUU. This was a draft agreement. The 2021 agreement was not executed by the government. So I need to be honest and truthful to Nigeria. ASUU might have the impression that if they have an agreement with government, there was no signed agreement with government. You've seen ASUU, they went on protest, they're not going to strike because we've engaged them continuously and meticulously. And we've told them that the mandate that the president has given us is to solve this problem once and for all. We're talking about 2009 agreement, 2021 agreements. We need, if these problems haven't been solved 16 years ago, what we're committing to ASUU and committing to Nigeria, that this President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has mandated us to solve this problem once and for all. We did not have planned to meet with ASUU today. We've met with ASUU on an ongoing manner. We've engaged them. We've worked shoulder by shoulder. We still met with ASUU president and their leadership just as early as just last week, Tuesday or Wednesday. What we've told them that the Yayale Ahmed proposal that they've proposed to him, the government side will meet today, and that's what we've done.
All right. Number of stories this morning: education. We look at oil and gas, and then we look at the economy. This morning, Rufai, your take on this story?
I mean, like the minister said, as regards education, they've been working shoulder by shoulder with ASUU. And
direct quote or your own?
No, direct quote. I mean, they've been working shoulder by shoulder, Abi. That's a direct quote.
Okay,
what
just
he
wanted
said.
to clarify.
Yeah.
But you're not accused of...
Okay. They've been working with ASUU. You heard it here, shoulder by shoulder. And when you look at it, I'm trying to get drilled down to the 2019 agreement. So I've seen the agreement. There were 3 slots for signatories on that agreement. Awuzie, which was ASUU chief then, Wale Babalaki, which was head of, the governing chairman of pro-chancellors then.
Yeah.
And Gamaliel Nosode, the chief negotiator, chairman of negotiation between FG and ASUU. I just saw the draft without signatures. So I'm trying as much as possible to be able to confirm if signatures were actually put on that draft. But the draft talked about the arguments, that we're all talking about, university autonomy, conversations about payment and remuneration, the fact that, okay, there should be a standard payment module across, Nigerian universities that can at least equate to the African university. But another thing that we also have to look is, as regards the payment threshold, the devaluation of the Naira has also caused a lot of chaos. Because when you look at the benchmark of payment compared to what was being paid before, I think the devaluation now has made the payment very, very basic. So for an entry-level lecturer, gets about 180, which is, when you look at it, 180, barely a little bit over $100 as we speak today. So that's also a big factor. So you see, when we talk about the economy, you can see the after effects, even with agreements and everything that the government had signed hitherto. But all of this, the minister is saying, ASUU is not happy about it. And that's why they're saying they're going to move on, press for their demands. So we had loggerheads with this ASUU situation. And I'm taken aback, and that's why when he said the Solicitor General said it wasn't a signed agreement, prior to this time on ASUU negotiations, I don't hear the conversation about the fact that the owner agreement was not signed, though. And that's why I want to get to brass tacks and see if it was truly signed by making my investigation. I've put some calls across, but I've not been able to get some empirical facts as regards that. But I hope the government solves it. As regards development plans, see, if you ask me that I should give you development plans that have been made in Nigeria that has not been implemented, I can name a lot. And I don't want to exaggerate that, say, if I'm to name everyone, I'm going to be a billionaire. If you had to give me a coin for naming everyone. Is it the first industrial plan, second industrial plan, Vision 2010, what happened to Vision 2010? Is it the midterm expenditure plan? This is the renewed hope plan. Is it the Agenda 2063 by African Union? Many plans. But the problem with a plan is implementation. But how do you implement at a time when you are not even circumspect about the parameters of making the plans in the first place? So take, for instance, we're talking about polio numbers and how, yes, we've done well in polio numbers and all of that. I don't pray for it to happen. But have we started planning that at a point, 20, 30 years from now, when Bill Gates' money stops coming for polio, what are we going to do? Because recently, Bill Gates said he's going to have a sunset clause to the Gates Foundation. Are we already planning for that? It's just like how when they pulled out USAID money, we're caught in a cul-de-sac. Most of the aid we normally give in the north and most parts of the country, all gone today. And our healthcare sector is suffering. We've not just done the numbers to show you how much our healthcare sector is suffering because of USAID. So if we're still having this developmental plan, and we are building it around goodwill, which takes a very focal point of most of our economic planning, we're not going anywhere. Look at even the ones Jeffrey Sachs gave to us. At first, he gave us Millennium Development Plan. After some point, Jeffrey Sachs now reviewed it to call it Sustainable Development Plan over a 20-year threshold. Did we meet most of the quotas there? We barely did. So it's not something to write glossy documents. Glossy documents, yes, Excel spreadsheet and all of that, charts and graphs. We can do that. And today, it's even easier to do that with ChatGPT. You just have to impute the parameters. But the question is, how implementable and what do you have to put in place on those plans? Okay, is it in a country where we squander all of our resources? Okay, look at the excess crude account that Abaso just set up. Where are we today? As at when APC came to government, there was $2 billion in the excess crude accounts. Today is $500,000. Owó ti tán. C'est fini là-bas. The money has finished. We said we used to buy Super Tucano. You remember how we said, how they even spend the Super Tucano money? You remember how the Buhari administration said, Super Tucano was a game changer. Once we bring it into the theater of command, baga, we'll destroy every insurgents and everything. Today we are still grappling the problem with the Super Tucano. Some people have also said Super Tucano was not supposed to be bought at that point in time and everything. So we are just a country of wastes. As I wrap up, Oyeka Wenu of blessed memory did a documentary about squandering and waste. She called it Squandering of Riches in the 80s. That documentary is still apt till today. I rest my case.
All right, Dr. Bati, your take on the story.
Okay, yeah, there are very clear editorial issues that can be considered. First, the National Economic Council, NEC as it is called, held its 151st meeting of the council. And at that occasion, the council decided that, we're going to put in place a renewed hope 5-year plan, agenda, economic agenda, to achieve the objective of the $1 trillion economy that the Nigerian government has always been talking about, or rather, the Tinubu administration has been talking about. Now, it's very good for any administration that comes along, whether Tinubu or whoever, to be aspirational, to say that we have, a plan, an ambition to develop this economy. That in itself, at the level of principle, is acceptable, is, something you cannot object to. However, it is beginning to look like this 1 trillion naira, $1 trillion economy that the Tinubu administration is talking about by 2030 is becoming a slogan. It's becoming rhetorical. It's becoming a political proposition. And how do I mean? I cite the example of Brazil. After all, the president just returned with his team from Brazil. 20, 30 years ago, Brazil was more or less in the same situation with Nigeria. There was a lot of devaluation. There were about 7 million people, pupils, students, on the streets. Cost of living was very high. Inflation was very high. Then came along Lula da Silva, who then said he will introduce reforms. So there's nothing wrong in introducing reforms. But how did Brazil go about it? I keep talking about, the biggest thing that President Tinubu can take from his trip to Brazil, state visit, they call it, is to learn lessons from Brazil. 20, 30 years ago, Brazil introduced reforms. They started at the level of agriculture, methane, using it to develop energy, developing agriculture. The 7 million children that were on the streets, they took them out and gave them capacity to be part of the productive process. Brazil invested in the international superhighway, information superhighway, because you can't develop in the 21st century without superhighway, without optic fiber. So at the level of primary agriculture, where is Nigeria? Nigeria is still looking for an old classmate from Belarus to come and supply us with equipment. Nigeria is going up and down just talking about agriculture. Even if there are states who have shown seriousness in this regard, Zamfara, Niger State, Lagos State, who are investing heavily in agriculture. But these are early days yet. In terms of information highway, they are even talking about artificial intelligence now. Nigeria has no strong fiber optics. So how are you going to build the capacity to build a $1 trillion economy when you don't have the information highway? Most of these are telecom companies. They are operating with radio frequency. That is the truth. They say Bosun Tijani is part of Time 100. Okay, Bosun Tijani has been a minister. We have just been recognized, he has been recognized for potential. It's not in terms of concrete achievements. We're not there yet in terms of AI, but we have seen some purposeful dedication to the economy of the future using AI, promoting AI, signaling by Bosun Tijani, who is the minister of the digital economy. But we are not there yet. Even our economy is not diversified. More than that, we have issues with work culture. We have issues with ethics. We have issues with the environment. If you appoint anybody who is competent from, Umukwata to be head of an important agency, they will say it's a minority. They will not look at the competence of the person. So how do you build a trillion economy, a dollar economy, with that kind of environment? So I think that the Tinubu administration on that issue is still very operational. But one important thing that came out of that 151st NEC meeting, in my view, presided over by the vice president, was the talk about the polio eradication program. Now, under the Jonathan program, this country, Jonathan administration, this country was declared polio-free. But we hear that in some states, maybe Kano, Kebbi, generally across the country, there have been 78 cases. But the thing is about sustainability, to make sure that what Nigeria once achieved and was recognized appropriately for does not come back. So I think that that's in good direction. But all this sloganeering, signaling about a $1 trillion economy, what I'm saying, that there is a complexus that is attached to it, both economically, sociologically, and ethically, that the administration is not yet addressing. Now, as for Bayo Ojulari. Now, when Bayo Ojulari became GMD CEO of NNPCL Limited, 5 months this week, or is it 4 weeks? The president gave him marching orders. Go and reform that place, make the NNPC more productive. But I think that since Bayo Ojulari got there, he has been wearing a pair of slippers. In a job that requires him to wear covered shoes and take charge. Yeah, it is true that the president gave him a board, the senior team that he's working with. Now, but what has he done down the line? The only thing that I can take from Bayo Ojulari since he took office is talking about the refineries. He doesn't control the refineries. And there is received opinion, confirmed opinion, that those refineries are moribund, that they are not working. First he came, he said, we will privatize the refineries. Then he came, he said, we will revive the Port Harcourt refinery. By his own admission, that Port Harcourt refinery is running at a loss to the tune of about $500 million per month. Then now he's talking, we will look for partnership. Who is going to partner with NNPCL Limited if there is no proper privatization? He says we're looking for partners to take 51%. Who will take a partnership in, refineries that should be sold for scrap? Now, Bayo Ojulari was recruited for this job, because of his experience in Shell, and it is assumed that he understands the issues. But he's not showing a proper understanding. He's not showing competence. He doesn't understand the fundamentals. He's talking about refineries, everyday refineries. How about upstream? How about other obligations? I think that what he needs to do, when they make you the CEO, it doesn't mean that you are the most intelligent. But you can recruit people who know the system, who can advise you, who can guide you, so that you don't come to the public and you talk like you are just coming from some kindergarten class in an assignment where you have been given serious responsibilities. He talks, for example, that some people are trying to get him out, this and that. Well, that's just talk. The NNPCL Limited is an icon of the investment process, economic process in Nigeria. There will always be issues. People will always try to get you out. So you should try to get used to that reality. That's the reality within the public sector. But in spite of all of this, however, all I'm saying that you should wake up and focus on the job and stop complaining. But the 6 months mandate that President Tinubu gave him has not yet expired. That 6 months that he has given him, I think President Tinubu should still give him a second chance for him to wake up. Waking up means doing the job. And doing the job means focusing on the important elements. So I do not join people who are saying he should be sacked and all of that. Once it is established that he has no hand in the, there's one man called ASUU that they say the EFCC has been going after. Once it is established that, he's innocent in that regard, he should be given another chance to quickly wake up. And he must know that he's in a political territory. It's a political appointment. This is not shallow. This is NNPC Limited. There are entrenched forces in the place who will continue to challenge him. There are past forces in that place who still have their agents in that system. Can he just wake up and read the tea leaves? Finally, as for ASUU, President Tinubu has a golden opportunity, as Dr. Alausa was suggesting, to solve the problem, not just of ASUU, but of teachers generally in this country. And I would like President Tinubu to pay attention to the model in Canada, to the model in the Scandinavian countries, where the teacher is king. Teachers are treated because they are the ones who train people for productivity in the country. I think it's very embarrassing that Professor Aworabu comes here, now and again, as a member of the This Day Live team, and he will say, well, professors don't earn more than 500,000. How much is 500,000 naira in this economy? And you expect these teachers, either at the polytechnic level or at the university level, to be committed to their work and to produce students. Now, Dr. Alausa tells us that no agreement has been signed. And we have been arguing on the principle of pacta sunt servanda, that agreements are sacrosanct. Now we hear that ASUU has not even signed anything. So there's also a problem with ASUU leadership. Are they so ignorant that they do not know that you cannot come and be talking about an agreement that you never signed? But President Tinubu and Minister Alausa should correct the situation by making sure that the education system is given what it deserves and teachers are treated as kings. After all, the other day, former Vice Chancellor of University of Lagos was saying that over 246 first-class graduates have left the university because of poor working conditions. So who are the people left now? 2-2. People, 2-2 draw. Third class. People who just managed to get a degree. In a country where certificates is prioritized and merit and ability is not prioritized. If first-class products are leaving the universities, so who is left? Second division. As we have in politics. We will have, Division 2 people teaching other people. What kind of country will you have?
Dr. Bati, you might be called in to go back to the university because we might need your first-class brain. So that since you have not jackpot, you might be called back into the university theatre, lecture theatre. But very important story here, and I'd like to focus on that this morning because education is critical. And in the words of Professor Piwuna, who is the national president of ASUU currently, he has said that the body language or perhaps even the statement from the presidency or this administration shows their lack of interest or seriousness when it comes to the education sector. And I'll put them forward. And this is not just for this administration. Previous administrations have also demonstrated that in the way that they have negotiated, not just at the tertiary level, but even look at it all down the line from the primary to the secondary, to tertiary education, we'll see that there. Now, with regards to this issue around was an agreement signed or not in 2009, is it valid or not here? Professor Piwuna gave an interview, which I'd like to just clarify. And from his interview, I must say that what Dr. Alausa said might be accurate, but it's not the fault of ASUU. Just to clarify that. So he goes down memory lane and talks about how right from the time when they had, from the Babalakin-led committee to the Professor Munzali Jubril committee, to the late Professor Nimi Briggs committee, and now to the Yayale Ahmed committee, proposals were brought forward by ASUU in a negotiation that the federal government was supposed to then assent to with their signature. He did mention, and I quote directly from him, that they looked at the documents page by page, item and item, and agreed on what needed to be modified in that agreement. Nevertheless, the federal government did not come back to ASUU with a signed document or agreeing on the terms. So what has happened over the years is a lack of seriousness and sincerity by government and administration to meet the needs of ASUU. So he might be well within its right, but it's not accurate. It's not because ASUU was unserious or they were unaware. It's that ASUU has continued to go to the negotiation table, have continued to go back to the drawing board to bring up proposals and draft proposals, but the government has not done its part in their own in agreeing to the proposal or, fulfilling the terms of the proposals by ASUU. This is where the big challenge is. Now, with regards to this administration, they have a good opportunity to finally do right by the university lecturers who have been consistently following up with previous administrations and governments to try and reach a point where both of them can agree and not make committees redundant, bringing all these experienced minds up to the table and yet nothing to show for it in the last 16 years. And so what ASUU is asking for, like I said yesterday, very simple things. Well, it should be simple for a government that's serious about education. So you can say all the good things and talk about how you're interested in building Nigeria. The president can go on foreign trips to Brazil and Japan and talk about how the youth population is our greatest asset. But if we're not harnessing this great asset through the medium of education, then we might as well just sit back at home and continue to watch and stop telling tales outside the shores of this country. What they're asking for is salary review. Yesterday, I mentioned the salary of the former vice chancellor of University of Lagos at 900,000 naira only, and the salary of a professor in university currently sitting at 700,000 naira. That is a shame, if I can put it that way. In fact, Professor Piruna talks about the massive brain drain taking place in our universities as a result of the fact that salaries are not competitive. In fact, we're no longer losing our best brains to to the West. Even on the African continent, he cites countries like Kenya, Uganda, Liberia, Ghana paying better the wages of university lecturers, and so the lecturers are actually migrating to these other African countries. That's a shame for us as the giants of Africa. So the big question for me this morning is that why is the federal government reluctant to honor the terms of agreement where they sit on committees and have meetings upon meetings and then they bring up a proposal and they refuse to honor the terms of the proposal and even refuse to sign or come to an agreement with ASUU. ASUU is not the problem. The government who shows an unseriousness to education is the problem. In fact, Professor Piruna asked the question that do we want to take the tertiary institution to what the primary institutions have been like, where private education is now the saving grace, as it were, for a child to be properly educated in Nigeria. And you'll see by the rise of private institutions who charge an arm and a leg for a child to get quality education in Nigeria. It's the same thing with the universities. If you look at the list of top-ranked universities in Nigeria and Africa, a private institution came #1 in Nigeria. That's a shame to the legacy of those who worked very hard for public institutions. That's Covenant University.
So there's a quick story here that's quoting Professor Piruna saying on Arise TV that the agreement was actually signed. But what I will do is I will go back and investigate some participants in the agreement to really know what has happened, what really transpired, so that we can get more sides.
So Piruna said in a Daily Trust interview, he said it has been reviewed over and over again, and the government has not acted on it. And
it was on Newsnight.
And that's where the problem is.
No, I'm giving you information.
Yeah, but he also mentioned, I'm just saying that he would...
information on Newsnight.
Okay, he would need to clarify that, but he said it.
Let me quote it for you.
Okay, let me just finish my thoughts this morning.
He said, we had an agreement with late President Yar'Adua, and the agreement was signed. It was during the regime of 2019. It was signed with our ASUU President, Professor Aloysius Awuzie, and this was quoted on Newsnight yesterday. Okay, well, he would need to, it's at variance with what he said in an interview with Daily Trust. There he said that repeatedly they proposed to the federal government, but the federal government did not act or respond to them. So two things there. But that's in saying what Dr. Lausa mentioned. Now, finally, with Mr. Ojulari, let me just mention that in every other thing, I had to also say that Pengerson gave him a vote of confidence yesterday, talking about how pipelines are now working. They've been able to deal with, at least reduce the incidence of pipeline vandalization, thereby showing up the daily production rate. So in terms of giving time, for me, I do believe very much that we need the brains of people who have come from the private sector, technocrats. Yes, he might not be politically savvy, but I do think that we need these brains to help us with our institutions such as the NNPCL. But I mean, that's all we can take right now on the news this morning.